Welcome to the Explainer. You know that feeling, right? That relentless, bone-deep, grinding exhaustion that just seems to define modern professional life? Well, today we are going to completely decode our modern burnout crisis. We really need to figure out exactly why our relationship with work has become so incredibly toxic. And most importantly, we'll explore this radical, absolute game changer of a framework for actually getting things done without, completely destroying ourselves in the process. We'll be drawing on some absolutely fascinating insights from Cal Newport's book, Slow-Productivity. Okay, let's dive into this.
Section 1. The Picnic Table Epiphany, a masterclass in unhurried work.
So to understand how to fix our future, we actually need to look backwards at this really surprising anecdote. Picture this. It's the summer of 1966. John McPhee is a hugely successful staff writer for The New Yorker. He's tasked with structuring this massive, impossibly broad article about the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. But he doesn't just sit at his desk and frantically start typing. No way. He goes out into his backyard, lies down completely flat on his back on a picnic table, and just stares up at the branches for nearly 2 straight weeks. And to be clear, he wasn't on vacation. He was immobilized, fighting off absolute fear and panic, just trying to figure out how to make this giant, lumbering mass of sources somehow work together.
Now, what's really interesting about this timeline is the sheer absurdity of his unhurried schedule, especially when you compare it to our modern expectations. Look at this pacing. He spent 8 full months researching. Then he spent 2 entire weeks literally just lying on a picnic table, paralyzed by structure. And after all that, it took him more than a whole year to write the final 30,000 words. Just think about that for a second. If a modern knowledge worker spent 2 weeks just staring at the sky without answering a single Slack message, they'd be fired, no question. Today's culture demands constant, nonstop output and visibility. But here's the thing. We absolutely cannot call McPhee lazy. Not even close. His track record is just staggering. We're talking 29 published books, a Pulitzer Prize, 2 National Book Award nominations. He penned articles for The New Yorker for over 5 decades, all while mentoring a whole new generation of legendary writers, like David Remnick. So there is literally no reasonable definition of productivity that doesn't apply to John McPhee. Yet absolutely nothing about his work habits was frantic or busy or overwhelming. His deliberate, incredibly slow pace actually resulted in a legendary career. Section 2. The Burnout Epidemic, when productivity becomes toxic.
Let's pivot from 1966 straight back to the present day, because right now, knowledge workers are experiencing the exact opposite of McPhee's unhurried mastery. We are stuck in an absolute crisis of relentless busyness. And, the pandemic was basically the match dropped right into the powder keg. During that time, the very word productivity started to trigger a massive, massive backlash. One reader who reached out to Cal Newport actually perfectly captured this. They stated that the productivity terminology encodes not only getting things done, but doing them at all costs. That deep-wired, very human pleasure of simply doing things well, it was being totally diluted because it was chained to this toxic demand for relentless output. This sentiment perfectly captures the total exhaustion of that era. Another worker pointed out that society was treating human beings like widget-producing machines, where productivity basically just equals widgets produced. Parents who were fortunate enough to even keep their jobs were suddenly expected to maintain this factory-level, constant output, all while managing absolute chaos and trying to educate their kids at home. The mask completely slipped. The sheer unsustainability of modern work was laid bare for everyone to see. And this discontent, it wasn't just a few isolated complaints. It manifested in massive, society-wide trends. We saw the Great Resignation, where millions of people just downgraded the demands of their careers. We saw the rapid rise of quiet quitting, with younger workers aggressively pushing back on employer demands. We saw this absolute bone-deep exhaustion with performative busyness. In fact, within just a year and a half, at least 4 major best-selling books hit the shelves, titles like Do Nothing and Can't Even, that took direct aim at our popular notions of productivity. People were completely 100% fed up.
Section 3. The Productivity Problem, a Flawed History.
So we have to put on our investigator hats and ask, how on earth did we stumble into this malfunctioning relationship with work in the first place? Why do we equate sitting at a computer for 10 hours a day with being productive? Well, take a look at this defining moment from the summer of 1995. Leslie Moonves, the newly appointed head of entertainment for CBS, is wandering the halls of Television City. It's 3:30 p.m. on a Friday, and the office is mostly empty, and he is
furious. He fires off this heated memo to his staff saying that their rivals are probably still working and that this absence will no longer be tolerated. This perfectly captures pseudo-productivity. It's this deeply ingrained yet totally flawed belief that doing work well simply requires being visible in an office for long hours. So the crucial point is, where did this obsession with visible effort actually come from? It comes directly from the Industrial Revolution. Back in 1913, Henry Ford used strict, highly measurable productivity metrics to drop the time needed to build a Model T from 12.5 hours down to just 1.5 hours. 1.5. It was a staggering improvement that created astonishing economic growth. It essentially built the modern Western world. But here is the massive aha moment of this whole explainer. We took those factory concepts and we awkwardly applied them to something entirely different. Think about it. In agriculture, you measure productivity by bushels per acre, right? Very clear input, very clear output. In the industrial sector, you measure cars produced per hour of labor. Again, clear input, clear output. But in knowledge work, what is the metric? Because it is just too hard to measure actual human thought, we just resort to tracking constant activity. We measure attending meetings, firing off emails rapidly, sitting at a desk at 3:30 on a Friday. We aim for this vague sense of busyness, simply because we lack a real metric.
And the crazy part is, the experts know this. Way back in 1999, the legendary management theorist Peter Drucker flat out admitted that work on defining knowledge worker productivity had barely begun. Even modern academics, guys like Tom Davenport, admit that when we try to measure knowledge work, we tend to do it in really silly ways. We literally do not have a functional definition of what productivity actually means for someone who works with their mind.
Which brings us right to the core realization of Cal Newport's analysis. Our problem isn't that we have trouble getting things done. Not at all. Our problem is that our very definition of productivity is totally faulty. We've built this system that demands ever-increasing busyness just to prove our worth, but without any firm foundation that this busyness actually leads to better results.
Section 4. The slow alternative. Reclaiming meaningful work. Fortunately, there is a way out for us. We do not have to accept this frantic freneticism as our default. Cal Newport's concrete solution is slow productivity. And this brilliantly illustrates a complete philosophy for organizing knowledge work efforts in a sustainable, truly meaningful manner. It means deliberately downgrading the importance of those overfilled, terrifying task lists and that constant, frantic activity. Instead, we start lauding the languid, purposeful intentionality of people like John McPhee lying on his picnic table. It's about recognizing that overload is actually an obstacle to producing results that matter. It is not a badge of honor. To put this into practice, slow productivity relies on 3 core principles. It's a simple, elegant rule of 3. First, do fewer things. Just stop trying to juggle 20 major projects all at once. Second, work at a natural pace. Professional efforts should unfold with varied pacing. Intense, hard periods absolutely must be counterbalanced by genuine relaxation at different timescales. And third, obsess over quality. Focus your energy on creating something truly impressive, rather than just engaging in performative, highly visible activity. Let's move to the next part and see how this builds a completely new vision for our careers. The goal here isn't just to offer you a few life hacks to make your job slightly less exhausting. It's proposing an entirely new way to think about getting things done. Accomplishment without grinding yourself down to dust shouldn't just be some nostalgic dream from 1966. It is entirely possible, and it absolutely should be the new standard for how we organize our working lives. So I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to chew on. Think about your own schedule right now. The endless emails, the back-to-back Zoom calls, the frantic need to always appear busy. Ask yourself, is your current frantic busyness actually preventing you from lying back, looking up at the sky, and creating something truly wonderful? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this helps you reclaim your time and your mind.